Disclaimer. Although no vulgar language was used in this video, the lack of profanities is well compensated for by the absolute futility of its content.
Could I offer either of you two gentlemen a wee jolt of Irish whiskey to usher in the new year?
Not for me, pal.
I do not drink. It is against my religion.
I always say religion is a fine thing. Take it in moderation.
Beef jerky?
Oh, gosh, this is either going to be very good or very bad. According to Michael Ugolini, who's an educator, he writes that there are two quotes that represent today's subject the best. The first quote is, "The road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom," meaning that you learn from your mistakes and you become wise by indulging in excess and then learning trial by fire sort of thing. The second quote is that moderation in all things. Basically, don't get carried away with anything. So tonight, we'll talk about the subject of moderation.
All right.
All right, so the first place we go to is the dictionary. Now, here we go. Some of the young viewers might not know what this is. They'll be very confused by this book, but this is what we used to use to look up words, right? Today we have Google, so we're gonna go ahead and ask Google what moderation means. Go ahead.
Hey, Google, what is the definition of moderation?
Moderation has two different meanings. Starting with the most common one, moderation can be used as a noun to mean the avoidance of excess or extremes, especially in one's behavior or political opinions. Is that the meaning you were thinking of?
Yes.
Sure.
Great. Here's an example of moderation being used in a sentence. He urged the police to show moderation. Do you want to hear a few synonyms for moderation?
No, no thanks.
All right, thank you. Just enough. Tony, what Google was saying was moderation is a noun, and the definition is the avoidance of excess or extremes, especially in one's behavior or political opinions. One could say that we have lost all sense of moderation, seeing things as they become today. The second definition is the action of making something less extreme, intense, or violent. All right, this is pretty good. I think so far of all the definitions we covered this season, this has to be the most elaborate of all of them, right? Self-restraint, restraint, self-control, self-discipline, moderateness, temperateness, temperance, abstinence, non-indulgence, leniency, fairness. The opposite would be extremism or stepping up, step up to the plate, I'm trying to be moderate. All right. This is quite interesting to me. This topic became more interesting as I was reading about it. And I want us to talk now about philosophy, because that's usually where we go next. I want to talk about ancient Greece, and then I want to play a little game. And the game will consist of me reading a quote from a renowned philosopher, and you tell me whether you agree or not, and why. Are you down?
That's different, sure.
All right, Tony, you're good with that?
Tony, are you okay with that?
Sounds good.
All right. So the first thing is, in ancient Greece, moderation is also a principle of life. In ancient Greece, the temple of Apollo at Delphi bore the inscription Meden Agan, which means nothing in excess. So in the temple of Apollo in Delphi in ancient Greece, they had written that on the top of the building. According to the historians, from the pre-Socratic through the Hippocratic era or time, basically any philosopher before Socrates. Socrates was such a monster in philosophy that anybody who came before him was deemed pre-Socratic. Okay.
What?
Pre-Socratic, meaning that came before Socrates. Health seemed to flow from observing moderation in exercise, in study, and in diet. So in ancient Greece, they believed that health came to those who were moderate in their practices of exercise, study, and diet. The second thing I want to talk about in philosophy is what is known as Aristotle's golden mean. And the golden mean would be the middle, right? Place in the middle. And I'm going to read off of Google now. It says, appearing in Greek thought at least as early as the Delphic maxim, the thing that was written in Apollo's temple, nothing to excess, and emphasized later in Aristotle's philosophy, the golden mean, or the golden middle way, is the desirable middle between two extremes, one of excess and the other of deficiency. For example, in the Aristotelian view, courage is a virtue. If you're courageous, it's a virtue. But if taken to excess, it will manifest as recklessness. And in deficiency, cowardice. So he's saying at the extremes, nothing good happens at extremes. Everything good happens in the middle. Are we in agreement?
No.
Okay.
Going on? Mr. Kirkland, you are out of order. You're out of order. You're out of order. The whole trial is out of order.
Actually, I will say for me, moderation sounds the same as balance. And I know I try to be more balanced, which is.
Okay. Unfortunately, so you're in agreement.
I'd say I'm more agreement than not.
Okay, I'm not interested in that view then. I'm interested in Tony.
Well,
Tony says no.
What to think about being healthy mentally and physically is if you follow moderation, that's going to make you very stable. But there are times when something more is called for. We may never achieve anything if everybody just stayed moderation, never trying to achieve anything that's never been done before. If you're going to try to achieve something new and better, you might not call it moderation anymore. Boy, that guy was an extreme. Edison tested the light bulb out many, many years and many different metals and different chemicals, and you would say it was extreme until it eventually found the light bulb.
Yeah.
If he'd stayed in moderation, he would have been just having a nice meal and going to bed early, making love to his wife, but that would be it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he did too much of the latter. He was more invested in the light bulb than probably pleasuring his wife, I imagine. I heard that he slept on the workbench because he was so obsessed with figuring the thing out, and that he said that he didn't fail 1,000 times. He found 1,000 different ways in which it didn't work. All right. But yes, that's a hell of a point. That is a hell of a point. Thomas Alva Edison. The house is in Fort Myers, if anybody wants to go and visit. Also, Hemingway's.
I've been there.
Yeah. Now, to the Greek mentality in ancient Greece, moderation was an attribute of beauty. The Greeks believed that there were 3 ingredients to beauty: symmetry, proportion, and harmony. All 3 of them have to do with moderation, right? All right, so here begins our game. I'm gonna tell you a statement, and then I ask you if you agree or disagree, and then if you disagree, I'll say why, of course. If you agree, then, So this modern day educator, if he's watching us by mistake, maybe he clicked on something and we appear on the screen, he'll say, well, at least he mentioned my name. All right. Ugolini, Ugulimi. He says, the road of excess can lead to knowledge that results in us living a life of moderation. Meaning, he thinks that if you abuse things, eventually you get burned. And when you get burned, you gain a certain type of knowledge from being burned from excess that allows you to choose moderation. I'm going to read it again. The road of excess can lead to knowledge that results in us living a life of moderation. Yes or no?
Read it again. You broke up a little bit.
The road of excess can lead to knowledge that results in us living a life of moderation. Meaning, if you lead a road to excess and you're excessive in the way you go about life, it can lead to knowledge, meaning learning from your mistakes, that will result in living a life of moderation. So he's saying that living an excessive life is necessary to learn about moderation by learning about your mistakes. Yes or no? I like this.
That's a tricky one, I think.
I agree.
And well, go ahead, Tony. What do you think of that?
I agree with you. It's tricky. Go ahead.
See, well, for example, so to an extent, it's true. When you see people excess in drinking wine, drinking alcohol, or being overly active, or you get to see. Well, I think in a person, it doesn't work as much. I think if you're overly excessive, you may learn about the moderate, but it makes it hard to get to the moderate. And I guess I'm attributing that to like alcohol.
Right. We achieve moderation through excess.
Right. And for example, in that example of, let's say, an alcoholic, I don't think it's true, or a drug addict. Through excess, they don't really learn moderation. They want it more usually, and they.
Am I hearing that you're saying no?
In that example, it is definitely a no. However, that being said,
it cannot be a no.
Right. No, but in that example is a definite no, which is what I was thinking about. However, when you apply it to something like, I don't know, let's say construction, someone may build a bridge and it'll be in excess of a size, and they go, you know what, that's not going to work. That's not going to hold the weight. And they would make it more moderate. They would scale it back. Same thing with maybe certain, things that we learn in medicine and science. If we don't have the people on the outskirts like Edison or Tesla who push that envelope and go way beyond moderation, and then they can turn back and use the knowledge learned from that excess to share it with everybody. Like, and for example,
that's what Ugolini says. So he's saying it doesn't apply to all cases. All right, Tony.
Well, I agree and disagree with the statement, because it depends on whether someone can learn from their mistakes. They do the excess and learn from their mistakes. Where I disagree with you is from like a drug addict. If somebody went really bad years of being a drug addict, they broke the habit and they're on the straight path now, then they did learn from their excesses how to be normal and straight.
Right.
Someone else who doesn't learn from their mistakes remains a drug addict and doesn't learn anything.
Correct. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I think we have enough of that one. Aristotle, the prodigal son of Greek philosophy, Plato's student. All right. This is a juicy one. I like this one. He says vices. Well, first of all, he says something beautiful that I think it will ring a bell with Tony. In the book, The Politics, Aristotle criticizes the Spartan policy from Sparta by critiquing the disproportionate elements of the constitution. For example, they train the man and not the woman, and they train for war but not for peace. Isn't that beautiful? That's beautifully said. We train for war, but we don't train for peace. And sometimes you have soldiers without a war who don't know what to do with themselves. Okay, but Aristotle says vices outnumber the virtues 2-1? Yes or no? Vices outnumber the virtues 2-1. Tony, yes or no?
That's a really, I haven't counted them up yet. I would, for my own part, I would disagree. I think they're equal,
Okay, God bless you.
but that's a moderation point of view.
Right. All right. Okay. Weavy, vices outnumber the virtues 2-1. Yes or no? According to Aristotle.
Dude, it's another tricky one.
It's a game. Otherwise, it will be the most boring game on a.
Yeah. Well.
Online.
And again, I'm trying to think it out. You know what? No, I think they're balanced. I also think they're balanced.
They're balanced. So you're saying that we live in a moderate world, that we live in a world where vices don't outnumber virtues, or vice versa.
Well, see, I always tend to complicate it. So the reason I think they're more balanced because, so let's look at just vices and virtues.
Okay.
Vices are usually more hidden, and explicitly hidden. Most people will explicitly hide their vices, and virtues are usually hidden as well, but not by choice. Like you can tell a virtuous person, but that person won't,
Think about it.
like, yeah, they may not recognize it. They're not gonna market it or yell it to everyone.
Unless
People
you're from Argentina.
know it or not.
Right.
What was that?
If you're from Argentina, then that could be an exception.
Yeah. Right. And what about you, Juan? What do you think? I mean, you're asking us. I want to hear what you think.
No, I'm the moderator of this game.
No, you must have an opinion.
Well, I'm the moderator, and I'm gonna get to that because I have a role to play here.
Okay. So at the end, you're gonna give us your.
Some of the common uses of moderation include a moderator who may remove an unsuitable contributor from the website. That's great. An unsuitable contributor. Why are you deleting me or blocking me from Facebook, for example? And then you say, well, you're an unsuitable contributor. And another way in which moderation can be used is a way of life emphasizing perfect amounts of everything, not indulging in too much of one thing, hence moderation. I'm a moderator in this game, so I'll just limit my role to that. Moving on. Now we talk about Socrates. Socrates was Plato's teacher. And he talks about something called debauchery. The definition of debauchery is bad or immoral behavior that involves sex, drugs, alcohol, etc. And Socrates says to his student, debauchery seizes their minds to that degree that though they often know which is the best way, they are miserably engaged in the worst. What happened to you that you're about to make a very, very dumb and an excessive decision, and everything in your body is telling you not to, and yet, nonetheless, you go forward with it? That's what Socrates warns his student against. And he even lectures a student named Euthydemus on moderation as the necessary first step towards happiness and enlightenment. So the question for the game is, do you agree with Socrates that moderation is the necessary first step towards happiness and enlightenment? Tony?
Yes, I agree with it.
Wonderful. Weavy?
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. I feel like this is like a real game, when you're in the game and they say, can you repeat the question, please?
Right. Well, you want to make sure you're understanding it the right way.
I'm going to add the right music to this video. You best believe that. Actually, 3, 2, 1, and then you're going to hear the music. Right. Socrates said that moderation is the necessary first step towards happiness and enlightenment. Yes or no?
Actually, no. I don't think it's the first step.
Fire tonight.
Yeah. I don't think it's the first step. I think moderation would probably closer be more to the last step, because it's what you learn after making your mistakes and maybe going on, going on the extremes, knowing what works for you, what doesn't. I think by being a moderate person, by being more balanced and not exploring more, you don't necessarily find your happiness. You stay safe, but you may not necessarily find your happiness there. And I don't think it's the first step towards happiness.
I think it also is contingent, and I'm going to go against what I said about my role. Shut up. You're laughing. I'm contradicting myself. It's not anything new. I think that it has to do with the stage of life that you find yourself at. I think anybody who's in their 20s will say, oh, screw moderation, man. I want to get drunk. Somebody in my age says, I'll have a cup of wine with a book. And somebody a little older might say, I just want the book. I'll just take the book. Or better, nothing at all. Just go to the beach and sit there quietly. So I think it might have to do with age, right? I think moderation could be a good metric system of maturity, right? Maturation, okay. Let's continue with Socrates. I like him.
Also, I'd like to add, when you say first step, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be the first step. It means it is a step. In other words, it has to be acknowledged.
No, Socrates is
acknowledged before you can.
Necessary first step. It's not a. It's the necessary first step. According to Socrates, moderation is the necessary first step. Unless Google is lying to us.
Me, I always tell the truth, even when I lie.
It could be. I agree with. I see what you're saying, Tony. You're saying there to be one thing.
Learn from your excesses, but then it would still be a first step as far as realizing that moderation will make you happier.
Huh.
If you're no longer overindulging in all the things, it's a step to understanding. It's a precursor, not a first step. A precursor to being happy and being happy with your life and balanced.
So you went back on your first answer. Which is that it had to be the first step, and you agreed with that.
Inconclusive. It says, I don't agree or disagree.
I had to redefine it because I don't think it says it has to be a first step.
But you can redefine. I remember when you and I were at the actor's place, and we had this one actor who was very arrogant, and we were reading a play by Tennessee Williams, and this actor started to improvise on the script that he didn't know, and then we said, "What are you doing?" Well, I'm changing the script. I'm improvising. And I said, are you capable of writing anything better than Tennessee Williams did? If you are, go ahead and edit, but if you're not, don't, right? But the point is, I don't know if we can edit Socrates.
But necessary step is not the same thing as a first step. I agree with it's a necessary step.
Yeah.
That's what I agree. I also agree that it doesn't have to be the first step.
All right. Well,
you could have excesses before that helped you learn.
Yeah. Well, Socrates continues to teach his students. They love to teach too. They were all teachers. He says to the student, but now we notice that the force of the good has taken up refuge in an alliance with the nature of the beautiful. For measure and proportion manifest themselves in all areas of beauty and virtue. What he's saying is that often that which is excessive and bad presents itself as beautiful. Is that true or not?
Say it again.
that which is bad or excessive presents itself as beautiful. You fall in love with a woman, like one of Socrates' students fell in love with a girl and kissed her in the lips. And Socrates really lost it because he said, how can you do that? You are not moderate now because now you're in love. If you're in love, that means that you're no longer rational. You see what lack of moderation does? Debauchery, that's what he called it. When you engage in debauchery, you're no longer moderate. When you're not moderate, you're not rational. Plato said that moderation is a synonym of reason, using reasoning. Okay, so we don't know about that one. I do believe that that's the case, that oftentimes the things that are excessive and bad for us disguise themselves as beautiful. The next point is the Taoist philosophy and religion. Moderation can also be recursive in that one should be moderate of how moderate one is. Yes or no?
Yes.
Can you be moderate about, you have to be moderate about being moderate also. It can be recursive.
Is that right? Then we have to be moderate about being moderate?
Yeah. Are you asking your wife? What is she saying?
She's a Taoist, so I was asking her.
Yeah, okay, okay. She's a Taoist. Great. So let me read that again. According to the Taoist philosophy and religion, alien, there we go. Moderation can also be recursive in that one should moderate how much one moderates.
Yes, you don't even go to extremes in moderation.
Right. Moderation is considered a key part of one's personal development in Chinese Taoism, philosophy and religion, and is one of the three jewels of Taoist thought.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Yes.
I mean, I agree with that it's important to them, and they live their life by that. Everything is moderation. They don't stress out about anything.
Because there's a good and bad to everything.
Yeah.
So it all there's always a balance, and you can find it. The one quote I was just reading, it not exactly right, is stretch a bow to the very full, and you will wish you had stopped in time. Temper a sword edge to its very sharpest, and the edge will not last long.
Right.
Sort of.
That's a very nice quote. If you're people from Argentina, anybody watching, the knife is an instrument for us. We use a knife for everything, and we take pride on how sharpened it is, and it always gets unsharpened fast.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. See, why didn't we invite Lynn into this much earlier? This is great, Lynn. Thank you so much. That's
yeah, thank you.
Wise woman. And now also I understand why when we asked Tony about the ratio between vices and the opposite, he said 1 to 1. Now everything makes sense. Okay. He had an audience. But the final story in philosophy from Crete is the earliest representation of the idea of moderation. It's probably in the mythological Cretan tale of Daedalus and Icarus. Remember, he flew up to the sun. Well, let me read it off of Google. Daedalus, a famous artist of his time, built a feather wings for himself and for his son, and so they might escape the clutches of King Minos. Remember, Tony, we used to read that monologue about Minos, King Minos? Okay. They were trying to escape this mean king. And so they built these feather wings. Daedalus warned his beloved son, whom he loved more than the world, fly the middle course, meaning don't fly too high, don't fly too low, between the sea spray and the sun's heat, between the sun and the ocean. Icarus, young, did not hear his father. He flew up and up and up until the sun melted the wax of his wings. For not heeding the middle course, he fell into the sea and drowned. You know, the morale here, the reason I left it for last was because it's not so much about moderation of height as much as it is listen to your elders, I guess. listen to your father. That's the message that I got from it, more so than moderation. But young Icarus was not moderate. He started climbing up. And if you are, for example, let's say that our videos become a hit by any mistaken filing or any miracle, and we become very well known for what we do, one could say that we need to make sure that we don't fly too high, right? Because
And not too low.
Yeah, and not too low, right? There we go. So we got that. The next topic that we want to touch is literature. And literature is where we like to go last. And to talk about literature and moderation, we have to talk about, unfortunately, we have to talk about religion. Not because I don't like religion, but because I like to leave it out of things. And to talk about that, we need to talk about the Puritans.
About what?
Puritans.
Puritan?
From pure. In 1649, the Puritans defeated and beheaded, they cut the head off, of Charles I. His son, exiled, left the country. His name was Charles II, to France, from England to France, and ruled the country according to strict moral and social codes. So the Puritans killed Charles I. They forced Charles II, his son, to exile to France. And in the meantime, this happened in 1649. Take notes, kids. In the meantime, the Puritans were very strict about moral and social codes. Anyway, after the Restoration, meaning Charles II came back, fought them and beat them, Charles II and others, influenced by their experiences in France, encouraged English poets and dramatists to throw away discipline, restraint, and conservatism from their works. Imagine that. You know, you're under the ruling of the Puritans in your own country. Your king has been beheaded. His son has exiled to France. While he's in France, he learns about the open-mindedness of French literature at the time. The son comes back, defeats the Puritans, assumes the throne, and says to everybody, you, Tony, the actor, the writers, the painters, forget about discipline, forget about restraint, conservatism, go ahead and do whatever you want and let it all out. This is an expression of freedom. The result was a literary period that was ruled by themes of moderation, realism, and reason, instead of the themes of judgment, morality, and religion. Right. The Puritans imposed those three themes: judgment, morality, and religion. And Charles II said, screw that. And that's what gives way in literature to what is known as the Restoration period in English history. It lasted from 1660 to 1700s. And it began with this exiled King Charles II, who came back from France and restored the throne. And once the Puritans were out and the monarchy was restored, the English society saw a complete rejection of the Puritan way of life. So this period of literature is born out of rejection. Like most things the best things are born out of rejection, I think, of this Puritan, very strict way of life. And the result was a style of poetry as represented in the works of John Dryden that emphasized moderation, reason, and realism. I'd like to talk about those three components briefly.
Sure. Well, and if you don't mind, because related to that, Juan, so one of the things that I think we haven't mentioned, and I think it's important about moderation, is that moderation is almost a cycle. You know, you got to go down and then it has to correct itself. It may overcompensate and go above board. And in your example there with literature, right, the Puritans went far to the left and it was very strict. And then almost to be in moderation, it almost has to overcorrect itself so that then it can be moderate and closer to the center. You know, and I think that's part of the path of moderation.
That's a good point. That's a good point, because there's nothing moderate about the Restoration movement in literature. It's actually quite the opposite.
Right.
John Dryden is so much the dominant figure. I'm reading this off of Google, God bless Google, is so much a dominant figure of the Restoration poetry that the period is often referred to as the Age of Dryden. But aside from being a writer, he was a critic. His poetry, like the rest of the Restoration poetry, is realistic, is satirical, and moderate. All right, enough of this technical stuff. Let me go down.
Another point to make about moderation.
Go ahead.
How do we agree on what is the moderate center? How do we agree what's the center? For one person, a certain kind of behavior, for instance, 2 drinks is moderate to somebody. Somebody said, that's not moderate. 4 drinks is moderate. Somebody else has, or that's probably not a good example, but certain kind of behavior. Certain kind of behavior.
Well, it's almost like we have to explore
Go to the gym. Let's say somebody said half an hour a day, 5 days a week is moderate. Say, are you kidding? That's not moderate. Moderate is an hour a day, 7 days a week. I mean, you have to, who decides what is the midpoint? The midpoint is moderation.
Well, Weavy, you had the floor. What were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say that again, I think part of being in moderation, you gotta kind of fluctuate and go back and forth to determine what that middle is. So I think no one, or very rarely do we identify the middle or the balance or the moderation endpoints without experimentation. And that's where, as with life, as with many things, it has to go back and forth. 2 drinks may be too much for you, but it may be fine for me. But for Juan, it may be somewhere in the middle. But only through action of the extremes and everything in between can we identify what the moderate, I don't know, let's call it the moderate segment is.
Yeah, the moderate ideal. Now, Socrates.
There could be disagreement, though. My point is, there could be disagreement on what behavior is moderate. That's all.
I don't think anyone knows, and there's so many variables informing moderation, but Socrates said that a man must know how to choose the mean to avoid the extremes on either side as far as possible.
Okay.
And I think that the answer that gives us is, in trying to answer your question, is a great question, is, to me, I know that something is moderate when it's not one thing nor the other. When I don't say, I don't have a drinking problem, but I'm also not abstinent completely of drinking. Moderation will be something that doesn't fall in either extreme, where in a certain way, it eludes definition.
Yeah. Because it could vary among everyone. Every single person can have a different definition of what's moderate.
Someone said, before we continue with literature, somebody said, medical doctor said, moderation is the root of all evil. And I'll explain, this is not part of the game. He said, that's how people get hooked up on vices. When it comes to life-altering habits, people say, oh, I'm just a social drinker. They think they are moderate when in reality some people are built in such a way that they lack the capacity for moderation. And when they delude themselves into thinking they're being moderate, everything goes to hell. All right, it's a great question that has no answer. Anybody watching this, the one person watching this, if you want to give us a comment and try to answer Tony's question, Mom, that would be great. Okay. I'm going to continue.
Actually, if I could, I wanted to add one small point of levity with literature. A very moderate story that we all know. Was it, I can't remember the name. The 3 bears. Mama bear, Papa bear, and baby bear. One was always too hot. One was too cold.
3 bears.
Goldilocks, thank you. And the 3 bears.
This is the story of Goldilocks and the 3 bears.
So that's a little story on moderation.
She was a thief and an usurper.
Yeah, and look, she was still teaching us about moderation.
Still teaching us. Even
a thief can teach us.
Who steals and breaks into somebody's home.
The brick house that wouldn't blow down. Why was that moderation? That's my point.
Moderation
now
is
it's more extreme. They built a house so strong that the wolf couldn't blow it down.
I think if Tony was in that story, he would choose to live in the house that is made of sticks. Not of hay, because he's too weak, but also not of brick.
Right. But see, technically, the hay is the sticks is the moderate answer,
right?
Because the brick is too hard and the straw was too soft.
Tony, if he was in that story, the 3 little pigs, that's how far down the rabbit hole we've gone today. he will definitely be in the middle one, and you will be building the one with bricks. I know you well. You know, you're a perfectionist. You like ingenuity and building things. All right. Anyway, I want to give you a little glimpse of what the literature of that period was like, because it was a period of literary liberation. One of the major ones is a poem, a very long poem, written by John Milton, the English poet, called Paradise Lost. Another one, which I want to talk about a little bit, by Earl of Rochester, is titled Sodom, like, Sodom and Gomorrah. And Sodom is an obscure, obscene restoration closet drama published in 1684. The play begins with the main character, the king of Sodom, who is he authorizes same-sex sodomy as an acceptable sexual practice within the realm. So if man on man, woman on woman, if the king decrees that's permissible, that's acceptable. This was the opposite of the Puritan literature, as you can imagine. One of the generals reports that this policy is welcomed by the soldiers, who spend less time on prostitutes as a consequence, but has deleterious effects on women on the kingdom, who have recourse to dildos and dogs. This is very grotesque, right? It's a liberation literature. The prince and the princess commit incest with one another. And with the court and country reduced to erotic madness, the court physician counsels, screw woman, and let there be no more trouble. The king himself, however, is unconvinced, while the queen dies of venereal diseases. Amid the appearance of demons, fire, brimstone, the king declares his intention to retire to a cavern and die in the act of sodomy with his favorite person. Okay, do you see the contrast? It was intentionally dark and obscure, same thing, right? Intentionally obscene, because it was a way of protesting against the Puritans. And that's how influenced literature is by society and politics. Looking at things the way they are now, they have been for a while, I wonder what the new literature wave will be like. I wonder what we'll be looking at. Anyway, I think it's enough of quoting people and talking about things. The bottom line is we need, for sure, to practice moderation. In my personal case, and Tony, you mentioned yours, I'll mention mine, it's extremely difficult. I am not a moderate person by any means. I don't have third gear. I have either first or fifth gear. If you're watching this, comment, see what you think. Anything you want to add. We're probably wrong about a lot of things, but at least we try. This is another topic that we covered today in this first season of South of Proper. Thank you, Tony, for joining us. And thank you, Weavy, for joining us. Until next time. All right, so that was it. What do you think, Tony, about today's topic? We're done, but what do you think about the topic in general?
I think it's an interesting topic because how you live your life determines how satisfied, how happy you are. Whether it takes moderation in general, I would think it takes moderation. But like you said, you wouldn't be able, if you were a moderate person, you wouldn't be able to write novels in Spanish and direct films and still have a full-time job and a family to take care of. You wouldn't be able to do that if you were in moderation.
Correct.
So what's normal for you, again, what is not the same as for someone else. I think it's a very important topic to discuss because it's a choice people make to want to be in the rat race and be under pressure all the time. Or do you want to be more like the Taoists and just go along with whatever happens?
Yeah, which is very much your way, I think.
I try to be that way.
The latter.
Yeah.
Let me ask you 2 questions before we go. For the sake of curiosity, and I guess I'm going to ask you first, Weavy. Tell me one thing in your life. How old are you now?
51.
51, okay. Tell me one thing in your life, Weavy, that you wish you had not been moderate about, and one thing in your life that you wish you had been moderate about. Go ahead.
One thing that I wish I had not been moderate about. Well, I've definitely lived my life more in trying to be in moderation. And at the same time, I think I never took a lot of risks with things. So maybe taking a little bit more risks, maybe in my career or my passions. I would definitely say I probably would have liked to, or if I can go into the past, let's say, and tell my past self, something that I think I would want to change, it would be, maybe take a few more risks and again, and pursue a bit more of my passions, and actually to even pick a passion.
And what about moderate? What do you wish you had been moderate about?
Moderate about, though I never thought I was really not moderate about it, but probably eating. I'm a big guy.
Great answer. Okay, that's for a lot of viewers watching. There you go. Tony, what is one thing that you wish you had not been so moderate about, and one thing that you wish you had been more moderate about?
I think I would have liked to have been more moderate about binge drinking. More moderate. I think I was overdoing it many times. I was just lucky nothing bad happened. But as far as changing things, it would be less moderate than the way I did it. I would have to change my I don't know how to describe it. I wouldn't have been able to. I did it the way I did it because of the way my mind was set at the time.
Sure.
I wouldn't be able to just. I couldn't go back and change it unless I could change myself.
It's hypothetical.
Well, like for instance, I didn't go out for many auditions as I could have, or stay at it and do plays for nothing. I thought I needed to make a living at it, but really I had a love of it, so I could have just done as much acting as possible.
So you wish you
maybe nothing would have come of it, but I wasn't ambitious enough. What I'm trying to say is, I could say that would have been better. The person that was in my shoes could have done a better job of going around to more auditions and do more acting. But I wasn't able to do that. I had life issues that were holding me back.
Right.
So
maybe you can pursue your passion more.
It's pointless to say that I would have regretted it because I couldn't have done it. I wasn't stupid at the time to know that I should be doing more, but I wasn't able to.
What do you wish you had been more?
Like procrastinating.
Right. What do you wish you had been more? What do you wish you had been more moderate about then?
Well, he did mention the
drinking.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. You and Weavy will make a wonderful team. With the eating and the drinking. Oh
yeah, moderation. All right.
There's so
but then there's actually, you know what? One thing I want to mention. Then there are the people that would say, if I didn't eat and I didn't drink, I didn't enjoy my life. and that would shun moderation. Let's be honest.
Right, right.
I mean, there's
a scene in Shakespeare where the guy, I think he says, doesn't the earth consist of the 5 elements? He says, I rather think it consists of eating and drinking.
Does not our life consist of the 4 elements?
So they say, though I rather think it consists of eating and drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.